Yep, there we are. Live from Amsterdam. Welcome to all our viewers. And this time, where you're not calling from Johannesburg.
Yeah, I'm calling all the way over from Amsterdam.
Yep.
Same place, same location.
No, really cool to of you to join us here in the new office.
Yeah, it's always very nice to be here to see where the heart of joy is.
Yeah, well, we moved the heart only like 500 meters because we're now in a new office at the Belmer Bias, a former prison. You like it?
Yeah, it's very nice. It's really nice to also form part of setting the new office up. Then whenever I do join the meetings during the week, I have a better picture of where you guys are at and what you guys are up to. So yeah, it's really nice to be here and be part of it.
Yeah, really cool having you here. And the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible.
Yeah.
I believe it's been a while since the last Q&A.
We did pause it for a month or two. But yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to then do the continuation of it together in the same room. And we're looking forward to answering any of your questions you might have asked beforehand, and that also please ask any questions in the live as we go on. We will try our very best to answer as much of those questions in best or the most detail we can possible.
Yep, because we already asked people to send in some questions. I believe we got exactly 100 responses.
Yeah.
I just checked it. But we're also going to answer as much as possible questions, as many as possible from the live chat. We have that right on the screen in front of us. So why don't we just dive into it, right?
Yeah, for sure. We'll do that.
Cool. You want to start?
Yeah, I will go for one of the pre-asked questions. That's,
cool.
From Tony. He said it's more of a comment than a question. The rest interval effort, recovery interval between hard efforts in your workout, example VO2 max and threshold, are still quite high in proportion to the actual hard effort. So no real recovery between the two efforts. So it's transitioning from, let's say, a threshold interval into a VO2 max and then back into a threshold interval, if I understand him correctly. And then he's also asking about tapering down the cool down phase. If I can comment on that a little bit. And so the idea with structured training is to pressure or focus on certain energy levels within your body. Is to kind of, when you are in a threshold interval and you go into a VO2 max interval, you're kind of changing the energy system that you do use, and then coming back into the threshold is you are now almost working a different type of energy system, and that is to. Sorry, I'm saying that.
Yeah, I'm fixing it.
Perfect. So it's basically. In that way, then also stretching different energy systems, and to do that, by doing that, you are improving your FTP in the long run. So it should be hard, but it should not be impossible to do. And if it happens, let's say more than once, like every single workout, then I might suggest looking at your FTP setting. Then it might be slightly too high. And then when it comes down to the cool down, that could potentially be something we could look into. But I would say if you do feel that after all the intervals your cool down is slightly too hard, I would say it's maybe best to just turn erg mode off and just ride at your own pace so that your heart rate comes down gradually. I'm not sure if there's maybe something you would like to add on that, about maybe especially about the VO2 max transition back to the threshold and so so forth. That kind of, yeah.
To be totally honest, I was kind of like fixing the audio because it was on the wrong device, so I was a bit distracted.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
But on the length of this answer, I think it was pretty extensive. I think it was a full-length answer. So I would just say let's go to the next question.
Yeah, maybe we jump to the live. I think that's some good questions.
Yeah, I got one over here. Let me just try to highlight it. It's from Arno. And he says, I would like your view on how Join deals with the difference between inside rides and outside rides. I can generate a lot more watts outside. How to deal with that? Yeah, can I answer this one?
Yeah, please. Sure,
it's a question that we got quite often.
Yeah, definitely is.
And the thing is, like, there could be like multiple things in play here. First of all, and it actually happens more than you think, is that like both power meters, like the power meter of your indoor trainer and the power meter of your bike, is not measuring the same thing.
Yeah.
So there might be a slight difference between those two. There could be a thing. Secondly, a lot of people, I have to admit, do experience this difference. And in a lot of cases, it's kind of due to the fact that on an indoor bike, which is really fixed, you really only can use your lower extremities, so basically your legs. And if you have like a lot of core stability, you're able to transfer like your upper body strength to the pedals. But if your core is a little bit less developed, you might experience quite a difference between your indoor and outdoor power. So how to deal with that? Well, first of all, you could consider, try to make sure that both devices are measuring the same. Secondly, maybe do a little bit more core stability work. And thirdly, if you really feel like, hey, you can't keep up on that wattage inside, then just set like the bias a little bit lower. Just go from, that's also possible in the Join app. If you do an indoor workout, just go from 100% to, for example, 95%.
Yeah, exactly. That is like for me, for example, this morning I came into the office and I did a workout on the indoor bike here. And that is something I struggle with. I struggle with doing the same FTP on the road and then back onto the indoor bike. And I generally just shift it down by 10 to 15 watts. So you're looking at maybe like 5 to 8% of your FTP. And that just allows me to just get on top of the watts or feel like you're able to perform the workout reasonably well. And that works for me, and I think that's a good way to do it. And with the bias level we do have in the app or in the workout player, it makes it really, really convenient.
I agree. Next one, maybe from previous sending questions.
Yes, let's get one here. Yes, so there's one from Zander de Vries. Maybe it's the same person, but I do recognize the name a little bit from the support side. And he's asking about Cadence as per advice per training. Mostly it is around 90 RPM. I noticed that when I don't look at the computer, I sometimes go to 95 or 100 RPM. Also when I'm focusing on pedal dynamics, Cadence shoots up toward over 100 RPM easily. Can non-power workouts be done at higher cadence, or should it be kept 90 RPM for a max effort?
A non-power workouts? What do you mean?
So I think he's referring to like strength exercises. So strength exercises on the bike. It's 90 RPM is the suggested one for, let's say, endurance workouts or some normal threshold workouts, for example, or non-strength cycling workouts. I would say you are free to ride at a higher cadence if you are comfortable at doing it. If you can sit at 95 to 100 cadence riding the same power, and then also being able to keep your heart rate within the zone, by all means do that. But I would not necessarily say riding over 100 RPM for, let's say, 3 hours is that sufficient. So I would say, or for me personally, I also find between 90 to 100 is more comfortable and more energy sufficient, I would say.
Yeah, so there's quite some research about that. Like, actually, an extremely low cadence is from an oxygen consumption perspective really efficient, like between 50 and 60. But if you're doing that, then maybe the oxygen consumption is really low, but you will notice that you have a lot of strain on your muscles.
Yeah.
So you're not able to ride like that for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours or multiple days in a row. So, but it's also like the other way around, like having a really high cadence makes it at a certain point a little less efficient, but it's really personal, you know. It is, there's so much factors in play. It's about like the length of like your upper and lower legs, it's about your total weight distribution, it's about the muscle fiber type, like you have more slow twitch or fast twitch fibers. So it's really personal. We just kind of like give a recommendation, and for most people we actually give this recommendation to make sure that people will try to also train their coordination instead of just going pretty low in their cadence all the time. And being able to ride such high cadences is actually really a good thing in this case. I don't hear that often.
No, not really. From support especially, you get quite a question that they tend to ride too low of a cadence.
Exactly.
They ride at 80. I think most people ride at 80.
Exactly.
If not lower.
And especially for those people, it's also pretty relevant to try in your endurance rides to also try to keep it around 85 or 90, but pay a little bit more attention to it. That's really train your like coordination side of it, and that's important as well.
Yeah. And then maybe jumping back to one of the questions in the live earlier, it was one of the first ones about from Karen and Edgar van Mechelen. Where the question is about the progression being 133%, and obviously it's good, but what does that mean? So basically your progression is measured from when your program has started, from day 0 to your, let's say it's a 3-month program and it's the FTP border. So Join has then planned your level and your estimated FTP of what it should and potentially be based on your current availability settings from day 0 to the end of the program. And if you have, in your instance, 133% progression, it means you are actually ahead of the program. You might have at some point have done more than what the program have asked, or there's 1 or 2 settings that might not be set up correctly. And generally this would be your athletic profile. So perhaps just take a look at your athletic profile and maybe set it up to 1 level or perhaps 2 levels higher, so that Joy can take that into account and possibly change some trainings for you and see if it's better for you to maybe do 1 or 2 sessions more a week, and then in that way plan your progression a bit better towards the end of your goal.
That makes sense. Here from the live chat, because that's more a question for you people, because someone asked, El Campvelo, are you planning a desktop app or some more advanced calendar showing your plan in advance and availability and goals, something like trainer road or intervals.icu? Well, this is something, please let us know in the chat if that's something you guys would really like. This is not really on a backlog at the moment, to be entirely honest, but of course we're also looking further down the road than 4, 5, 6 months from now. So anyone who's really interested in like having more kind of a desktop or web browser kind of functionality, please let us know.
Yeah, and actually it's something where if someone in the chat or in the live feels that they would take it up on themselves, is to add a feature request from our Reddit forum page. And then in that way, the topic is there, the topic is open for discussion.
Yep.
We can then see what the users want, if there's enough users that is interested in that, and then we can obviously, based on that information, take it from there and see how we can handle that. That's definitely that's probably the best way to do it. Is to do a feature through a feature request, and then we can take it from there.
And I hear you guys with going for web and also integration with intervals.icu, something we would definitely take a look at. If I can add, because Elkan Velo also asked a little bit earlier about, because I really like that question, about the readiness and whether we are up for an integration with Whoop.
Oh yes, I got it, yeah.
Elkan Velo is all about integrations.
Are you planning integration with Whoop? If yes, when can we expect the first beta integration?
Yeah, so first of all, yes, we actually designed readiness also to be compatible with other activity trackers, and whether it's a Whoop or an Oura Ring or a Fitbit or whatever, that's something that we would like to add, step by step, and Whoop is definitely on the table. Thing is, with these kind of things, it's not only depending on us, on our side, whether and when we could add a functionality like that. But if Whoop plays along and we can make this happen within 6 months from now, because that's always a thing with kind of software development. I mean,
it's a partnership at the end of the day
as well, and also let's not overpromise features, but try to over deliver. But this is something that we are really.
We definitely take any feature request to heart, and we actually look at each and every one of them to see how best we can integrate it into Join. And as you say, it's easy to have a discussion about it, but it's hard to make a promise about it. And we'll always have, and we always are open for feature requests and discussions on any new feature or integration that you guys would like.
For sure.
Yes, and then earlier there's a question about Didier Lamprecht. Maybe I'm pronouncing his name slightly wrong.
Pretty okay.
Will 45-minute rides to and from work 2 times a day also improve your performance on longer 4-hour rides with your mates on the weekend? Yes and no. So if you are simply just riding to work and back at a really easy pace and you're not doing anything other than that, it will not really improve your capabilities of riding for 4 hours or 5 hours, or perhaps even doing some races. The best thing would be to do is to, if you are currently using Join, is to set your availability to 45 minutes to an hour for these commuting days. And then in the morning or in the afternoon, whichever way works best for you, is to set your set your availability 45 minutes to an hour, but then do an easy ride to work in the morning, and then in the afternoon you do your Join suggested session. So that might be interval training, that might even be another easy ride depending on the phase that you are in your program and what you have done the day before or what comes the day after. That, in my opinion, would be the best approach, because just doing simple riding every day might not improve your capabilities of riding with your mates for 4 hours at the end of the day.
Well, to some extent. It also depends also on your starting level, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
Maybe in the beginning, when you start out with a pretty low stamina, you will improve also on that 4-hour ride. But in the end, yeah, you need to. There's a certain limit on only adding those 45 minutes, right? That you would, yeah, like to extend those rides in order to be, yeah, to improve your endurance capabilities in a 4-hour ride. So there's a yes and no, and that's something you said as well. I do think like it's important to emphasize you don't need to run a marathon in order to, or you don't need to train like a marathon lengths in order to run a marathon. You know, so you can be pretty good at also like long endurance events by not doing those distances in your training. That's pretty important to stress.
It's just about targeting the correct energy systems or zones during your training. And something I would like to touch on, I see there's a question from the live from Leonard, and I found your question on the pre-asked question, so I'll answer that for you right away. It is in Dutch and quite a long question, so I will ask Jim to maybe take this one up.
Okay.
As that, because my translation from Dutch to English might not be fast enough in my head.
So it's from Leonard van der Meers, and I'm noticing that I find it pretty difficult to do like longer intervals on a higher cadence. So this is actually the opposite question of the one that we previously answered. Than doing like the same power but with a lower cadence. When it ever starts to get really tough, when it starts to get really tough, sorry, I'm translating here, would it be more sensible, A, to lower my cadence and to keep the power, or to keep my cadence and lower my power?
Yeah, I would say it might be best to lower your power slightly, but it also depends on how low your cadence goes. If your strength workout is generally between 50 and 60.
No, but this is not a strength workout, right? This is not necessarily about strength workout.
So I misunderstood then slightly.
No, it's just about I don't know, regular intervals. Because I do agree with the strength intervals, it's really important to try to keep it around that 60 RPM.
Yeah.
Because you will find that it's way easier to do the same power output on 80 RPM, for example. But in this case, this cadence is really a recommendation and an incentive to also train your coordination. If you feel you can only hold that for, I don't know, half of the interval, then just keep the power the same for the second half and lower the cadence a bit. That would be actually my answer.
That would also be something that...
you were going the other direction.
I was going slightly the other direction, yes.
which is fine. No, but we can have a debate. I mean, that's just my opinion.
It's. I think it's like if you look at the two different spectrums of it between a strength workout and a normal threshold workout where the cadence is higher. With strength workouts, the focus is more so with the cadence than it is with the power, but you should be in those like close to the same zone as where it's prescribed at. But the focus is on cadence, where with a threshold workout with a 90 to 100 cadence, for example, the focus is more on the power than the cadence. So it is okay if you go, let's say, to 85 cadence, but also it's okay if you go to 95 cadence, because the focus is more on targeting the zone than targeting the cadence.
Exactly.
And that is what I thought of explaining it in that way, so people understand maybe both sides of it.
And so I would say like the cadence is kind of like the extra catch. It's not the objective itself. It's like secondary. It's a secondary objective. So to say.
And then there's also a question from in the live from Patrick, where he's asking how important is it to stay on the bike for the full length of the workout? Is it okay to take a small break on the way, or is it made to be ride in oyster? Or do you have to complete it in one full ride? I think it depends on the length of the workout. I think if it's only a 2-hour workout, for example, you just focus on completing the workout and then maybe have a coffee stop after the ride. If it's longer than that, let's say close to 3 hours or 4 hours, then yes, definitely have I would say, short, small stop, refill your bottles. But there is a balance in that. It depends on your level. It depends on if you are on a advanced or pro athletic profile, or you are on a, let's say, intermediate or amateur athletic profile. It's also the focus on what you are training for. For example, if you are training for rebound, it might be best to work closer to 3 hours or more, and then have a small stop. But yes, it's important to work on that, and to also try to push your body to do a little bit more. Because if you stop too often, it might not be the greatest idea to do more often. So it's important to do a bit of both. Sometimes to also enjoy and then have a small stop.
Sorry.
No problem.
Maybe repeat your last sentence.
Yeah. So in short, I think it's important to just take note of what your objectives are. Or is your objectives to ride a smaller sportif? Then by all means have a coffee stop or a small stop, 2 hours or so into your ride. But if you are training for something like rebound, like a really long event, then maybe only stop after 3 hours or so for a small stop. But that is, it's with that said, it's no point in stopping a half an hour in between a 3 hour ride or 2 hour ride if
that's the thing.
you are hoping to improve your endurance.
Yeah, especially with those endurance workouts, it's also about your stamina deteriorates through, or your level kind of deteriorates through the workout itself, and that's actually an important stimulus for your body to improve. And if you kind of like in a 3 hour ride take a 45-minute break, you're actually doing 2 workouts.
Yeah.
That being said, if you don't take a break and fill up your bottles in a 4 hour ride when like the weather is pretty hot, then you're overdoing it basically, because you need to refill and replenish and everything. So you need your breaks, but try to limit them basically. That's what I would say.
Have a reasonable break, but not don't overdo it.
Exactly. Hey, there's one here in the live chat from Menno de Boer. Often I have to travel abroad for work, sometimes to countries where I don't have access to an indoor bike. What alternative training do you think is best to lose as loss as possible cycling fitness? I have a pretty clear answer about that one.
Yeah.
You might have, you know it already. It's basically running, and because of a couple of things. First of all, you're traveling for work, so you probably will have enough on your mind. You have enough on your plate, and having just throwing in a pair of shoes and maybe some shorts, and you're good to go. And they are like. Basically, you can run all over the world. Yeah. Although that being said, I was a weekend in Naples, last weekend. The traffic over there was so crazy.
It
was kind of like impossible to find a normal lap. But it's
true. It's something that I've done now on my trip over to this side. It's unfortunately for me, the bike has been slightly delayed with the traveling to this side, and luckily I had running shoes in the bag. And I've been just doing a run every day or so, and it helps just keeping your body active. And
exactly.
Yeah.
The only thing is though, especially because of like the strain on your muscle, on your tendons and on your joints, the thing with running is you can't never run, then go out for work and then do 5k run. You need to maintain a certain level of running, at least once every week, in order to be able that when you travel for work, let's say for a week, that you're able to do 2 runs within that week. So there's this discrepancy basically between trying to fit in something that you're not really used to, but also need to maintain a certain level of running in this case. Otherwise, you can't do any rest.
Yeah, and there's a high risk of potential injury if you are not used to that impact. Because us as cyclists that's generally only cycled, or majority of the time you only cycle, your body is not used to the impact. It's advised if you are not used to running to maybe just start off with a 2 kilometer run, for example, and you just slowly build it up from there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Also in the live, there's two questions from two different people, but they're very similar. So the one is from Wim Huben. In the email of my Zwift file, a link with training peaks is recommended. What is the benefit? And then a different question, similar, from James Eastwood. If you link training peaks, the workout will appear in Zwift or in Develop automatically. So it is the easier route through Training Peaks. So if you, for example, or I've already linked Training Peaks and Zwift on the respective platforms, and you have Training Peaks linked to Join, you export your Join workout to Training Peaks, and then it will automatically appear in Zwift. That way, you do not have to do the workaround with the Zwift file from the email, and in that way you have your workout quite simple and within a few seconds in Zwift.
Yep. I do that actually.
Yeah.
I've set this Training Peaks connection once, and then it's there like all the time, and I just have to press upload to Training Peaks, and then it's there on Zwift. That works really well for me.
Here is actually also quite an interesting one, maybe that you can add your 2 cents on. It's from less than 2 minutes. Hey, does Join consider my intensive weekend rides to plan the rest of my week or weekend rides? Yeah, many times I feel tired for the weekend rides. I ride for using Join 1 day rest. I do add weekend rides and Join as well. So it's basically if you ride with the group ride on the weekend and you do more than what is planned, and how does that affect, and does it affect your plan for the weekend, or sorry, the next week?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
I'm rereading it. I write for using Join on day rest.
One day rest.
1 day rest.
So maybe 4 days is riding and 1 day is resting.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we maybe best to focus on is the bigger question of this question.
So the bigger question is basically, I do like pretty intense ride in the weekends, and does Join take that into account in like planning the rest of the week?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe there might be 2 questions involved here. It could be like, I'm planning on doing intensive rides in the future, like next weekend.
Yeah.
Well, if you want Join to take that into account, make sure that you plan a ride and then you add an RPE and a duration.
Yeah.
And then Join sees, for example, if you plan like a 4-hour ride with an RPE of 10, then Joins know that you're doing like whatever.
Maybe a big group ride or something on
a pretty intense one.
Yeah.
And then Join will plan like on Friday and Thursday will probably give you a couple of days off. But the other way is like, and that is like pretty logical, right? If you do like a really intense ride and you upload it to Join and you say like, hey, there was a hard ride for me, and we see that also in the numbers, then you will probably get a day or 2 off the bike.
Rest, and then from there on, Join will do its best to get you back into your training for the rest of the week.
Yep.
If you scroll on your Join scroll bar on today's this training, you'll on this day be able to, let's say Saturday or Sunday at the bottom, plan a ride, and then your planned session for that day will be removed. and you'll be able to do your group ride or your harder ride. Maybe we should continue in the chat, and there's a few questions.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
Jeroen Koeleman, it's a pretty technical question, but I think it's a really relevant one. The joint score, the workout score power zones are different than the workout zones I get during the ride. Therefore, I often get a lower workout score while I did the ride in the prescribed zones. Is this a bug? This is a really interesting one, because first of all, in join, sometimes, for example, we prescribe that you doing like an interval really low in the threshold zone, or like low in VO2 max, because it's a 5 minute VO2 max interval, and then maybe it's set like on 106%, and then we say like, hey, try to keep your power within like 101 and 111.
Yeah.
Sometimes when it's like a really short VO2 max intervals, we say like, hey, try to do it like at 115%. And then Joan would say, try to keep it between 110 and 120. And we would never limit ourselves in like only saying, hey, keep your power within like the middle of a zone, because that would oversimplify so much things here. So the power and the range, because that's not a zone, the range that is mentioned in the workout is often different than the zones that you'll see. And the zones are just a visual representation to show you after your workout how many times did you ride in whatever zone. And then the important thing here to notice is, in the actual workout score calculation, we don't calculate the amount of time that you did in a current zone. We look at those ranges. And if you get like a really low score, then probably your duration or your intensity or your total TSS might be off. Or you didn't ride in the prescribed ranges. And that's something to take into account here, that the zones that we show in the visual representation of your workout analysis is not the same as the ranges we prescribe in a workout. I mean, it can be the same, but it's not. It's actually not. Really connected.
Yeah, not in too much detail of the connection between the two zones. So it's best to rather focus on the middle of your target. So let's say it's 101% and 111% of FTP. Focus as best as you can to maintain it at 106%. Especially if you are indoor, it's slightly easier, but outdoors, just do your best to keep it within that range, and you should get a better workout score if you are sticking to the rest of the training program. So we are getting quite a few questions already coming in, more so than before, and we are edging closer to the
maybe doing like a previous sending question.
Yeah, let's.
But here's also an interesting one, if you like me.
Here's
one of Jose. I like to have the possibility of planning a weekly race.
Yeah, just racing Zwift team time trials on Thursdays as a goal. So yes, I actually got a similar question this week in support, and my approach and what I suggest is that users do is to then in this case select a criterium training program, and then that way you'll be best prepared for the duration of your Zwift Racing League for the team time trials. And then your team time trials on Thursdays you add as a planned ride for intra-join, and then that way it will not give you a planned ride on the specific day, and it will adapt the rest of your week's training accordingly. That's probably, I think, the best approach.
Yeah, but can I add something? Like having a goal as being your best every Thursday is a pretty silly goal.
Yeah, that is that's not realistic.
That's not the idea of training. The idea of training is that you spend more than a week of getting in your best possible shape, right?
Yeah.
So That's also the thing, and there are a lot of like scientific papers about it, that even when you look at the pros, they actually just tend to get slightly worse over a period of racing, and then they need a break, and then they build up their stamina again,
Yeah.
and then they go to a second phase of the season. So being in your best shape possible like every Thursday, that's impossible. You need to have like, you can have secondary goals, but you should have like one big primary goal. And that one big primary goal though can be like, hey, I want to be in my best shape ever in 2 months from now during a time span of 4 weeks. It doesn't necessarily need to be 1 day or something.
Yeah.
But that still means that you train 2 or 3 months towards like one race. And then maybe the races after that, you're also like at a top level shape.
Yeah. That it's good to focus on the bigger picture of a training program. And you get it quite often where people want to be in top shape for 3-4 months of a racing season. That's starting soon in the Netherlands and Belgium and quite a majority of Europe now. And it's important to have this bigger goal to train for, and to sometimes maybe just skip 1 or 2 races and make sure that you are building and improving yourself in the long run. Should we do maybe one more from the live, or should we maybe go to one of the...
Yeah, do you got one there?
Not immediately, but we can get one here quickly.
Well, I can otherwise...
Or we just go with, maybe the one from...
Okay. Are you planning to allow modifying training zones by users? For example, FTP I can do... For example, FTP I can do on 290 watts, but when I do inside or laboratory tests, my FTP is 245. Tweaking zones would be helpful in this case. No, well, this is a really interesting one. Personally, first of all, zones are actually dead. Zones is just a visual representation of making it easier, like, hey, did I comply with the goal I had in mind? You know, if you want to do like a 3-hour low endurance ride and you were 3 hours in like a different zone, then you see immediately, hey, there's something off here. But nowadays, especially because zones were actually intended once when we didn't have these head units that we could connect like to device like Join, and having that structured workout on your head unit, you needed to remember what actually the plan was.
And it goes back to heart rate.
And then you had like, okay, I just need to be somewhere in between there, and then I do 3 minutes somewhere in between there, and that was kind of the case. Now we can just send you away and we can say, hey, you do it at 97 and at 92 and then back at 85 and then an interval of 105%. And that would be impossible to remember. But now with structured workouts on your head unit, you can do that. So what we do now is, of course, because it's literally impossible to ride exactly at, for example, 105% of your FTP for 3 minutes. You kind of fluctuate around it. So we give ranges. And that's what we do. And zones are a visual representation of like training objectives. That's something you use in analyzing workouts. And in like, for example, compiling all the workouts that you did over the last 5 months or so, and then see like, okay, how many time and at what percentage did I ride, for example, in the recovery zone or in your threshold zone, and how, for example, polarized is your training plan. That's the thing why we use zones like afterwards, but not that much anymore before your workout or during your workout. And I think that's a pretty important take here. Very, very true. Maybe a last one from previous questions. You got one?
Yeah, we can.
Because we're almost close at 45 minutes, and we promise to keep it within 45 minutes. Not sure we will make that, but if you just the last one.
Yeah, so there's one from Siat or Seat. It's quite a difficult name to pronounce. Sorry if I get it completely wrong. I just finished my classic race plan and it was a big success. I improved my time by 24 minutes in a horrible cold windy conditions compared to last year. Now I'd like to improve my power on short climbs. I'm struggling to hold the pace towards the top of the climb. I need 5 more seconds to make the hill with the pack, and after that I feel strong. I can see the group but can't bridge. First of all, congratulations for improving your time by 24 minutes. That is
That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive, I must say. And then, well, it's good that you already have a secondary goal to train for, and you have identified that you do have or you do struggle with shorter climbs, and I think it's for most people really hard to finish off the last 50 meters or so of a short, hard climb. My advice would be is to start with our short climbing program. That will be 3 months. That will focus on any hills from 5 minutes to 8 minutes. And then just focus on starting the climb steady. When you do go out into a race, for example, or you ride with the group, start it off steady and work your way into the climb. I think it's very easy to start off too hard, too excited, and then you are left running short of legs and short of breath once you come to the top of the climb. But I'm sure if you start the short climbs program, focus on the intervals for a few weeks, and then even leading a month or two, and then go try the same hill, and you'll most definitely see some improvements.
For sure.
Do so.
And if I can add something, because I do think that his aerobic power went up like significantly.
Yeah.
And because he also says like that he feels recovered quite fast. And it's just like 5 or 6 seconds, like the last 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah, the last 5 seconds he's struggling with.
And that kind of sounds like, okay, his anaerobic power now, is next.
Yeah.
He should like improve on that. And but his aerobic power is really good. That's also why he's recovering so fast. That's why he has this feeling like, hey, if I just can hold on for that last 5 or 6 seconds, he's there.
Yeah, he has it in the better way around because the endurance, like his aerobic power will never not easily disappear now when he focuses.
No, exactly. That base is there.
And the base is there.
For
if
sure.
it was other way around, it would have been maybe slightly more difficult.
Yep.
But with the short climbs program, it will keep the balance of both.
Exactly. But a little bit more like focus now on this anaerobic part in those VO2 max intervals, and I think that could do the trick for him.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that within a few weeks he will already feel the difference and getting the confidence of being able to stick it out for that 5 seconds longer.
And then he should mention it in the next Q&A in the chat.
And then we can see if those suspicions are true.
Would be cool. I think we are wrapping up here.
Yeah.
We might have another beer because we're celebrating. This is our first week in the new office, and we will show you a bit more about it in the upcoming like Q&As and other stuff. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for sending in those questions. Be aware that whenever your question is not being answered, we have like a great Reddit section where a lot of your questions,
and we have a really well supported user base, I would say.
If you send in something, you might get like a proper answer within 5 minutes or so. It's pretty impressive. But also you can also reach us through support, of course, and probably Rohan will be the one answering those questions. Once again, thank you all for watching. We'll be back with another Q&A, not sure when, but I think you will be
in the next month or so. I'll be in Johannesburg.
That would be really cool. So thank you all, and have a great weekend.